Namaste, Namaskaram, Vanakam, Namo Namaha, Jai Ganesha, Jai Hindu Yoga Dharma. So we're actually having a power outage this morning. So the electricity went dead. Hopefully it will be resurrected. So that's why you're seeing the little circle there. So how apropos, because today's Upadesh, resurrection, what exactly is arising? Let's consider a sacred story that may point to a transformation so profound that it is described as death and rebirth. The question, however, is whether we are meant to only believe this happened to someone else long ago, or perhaps to awaken to what must die, if you will, and what must arise within ourselves right now. For most, if not all, Christians, the bodily resurrection of Jesus Christ is not a decorative teaching at the edge of their faith. It is the cornerstone. And by the way, that's where the Hakenkreuz comes from, which was the mistakenly called the swastika by the Germans. The Apostle Paul makes the claim with great force. If Christ has not been raised, then the faith built upon him is empty. Wow. A specific event said to have occurred in the 1st century Palestine era becomes the hinge upon which salvation, sin, judgment, and eternal life are made. That claim deserves to be approached seriously, and therefore questioned seriously. What exactly is meant by resurrection? Is it the restoration of a dead physical body? Is it a transformed body, no longer subject to ordinary time, space, and death? Is it a sacred narrative, speaking through the language of miracle? Or is it a human attempt to give religious form to the universal hope that death cannot have the final word? Now, the question is not a cheap attack on grief or devotion. Human beings have always stood before death with anguish and wonder. Every culture has searched for language adequate to that encounter. But when one ancient story is made the exclusive condition for all humanity, then its meaning, evidence, and consequences have to be examined. As Mark Twain said, people take the figurative language of the Bible and the allegories for literal. Twain aimed that observation at popular images of heaven, harps, halos, endless hymn singing. Yet the question reaches further. When does a community allow sacred language to be symbolic, poetic, and when does it insist that the same language must be accepted as literal, biological history? Resurrection stories are not new, of course. The theme of death, restoration, and transformation is not unique to Christianity. The New Testament itself includes a raising of Lazarus, and in Matthew, the extraordinary report that many deceased people came out of the tombs and appeared in Jerusalem. Christianity distinguishes these, however, from Jesus' resurrection by saying that Lazarus returned to ordinary mortal life and would die again, whereas Jesus arose in a glorified, imperishable state. Of course, totally unprovable. That distinction is important, however, to Christian theology. It does not remove the larger human pattern. Sacred traditions repeatedly use this language of death overcome to speak of hope and transformation and perhaps a divine nearness. Hindu tradition, for example, gives the instance of the story of Balaganapati. The young boy, guardian, stands firmly to protect his mata, Parvati. He's beheaded by Shiva, obviously dies, then restored and transformed, with the elephant head, by which one the world knows as Ganesha. Such a story, of course, need not be reduced to a laboratory claim in order to be honored. It teaches courage in defense of Dharma, and the severity and eventual grace of the Guru, the restoration of the divine family, and the possibility that catastrophe may eventually become wisdom. The question is not whether a Hindu must ridicule the story, nor whether a Christian must abandon the resurrection. The question is why the Christian miracle is often demanded as literal public history, while the Hindu miracle is easily dismissed by the same observer as myth, superstition, fantasy. That's not a neutral standard. It is preferential belief. So where is the resurrected body? The question remains. If Jesus physically arose, where is he now? Traditional Christianity answers that with the ascension. To where? Jesus appeared to disciples and then entered heaven, remaining present in a sacramental manner and expected to return? Okay. Catholic teaching itself describes the resurrection as a real historical event, while also saying that it transcends and surpasses history. It acknowledges that no one witnessed the moment of resurrection itself. This gives the claim a distinctive structure. It is declared historical, but its decisive mechanism and its present physical evidence lie beyond historical inspection. Very convenient. A person may accept this by faith, of course. It's not the same, however, as publicly repeatable evidence. Here's where the tension arises among Christian apologetics. Remember, which does not mean to apologize. It means to support their claims. The regularity, intelligibility, and order of the natural world are often referred as evidence for God. Yet, the central claim of the theology is a singular interruption of that order, a dead body rising, and earning a realm of who knows where. The believer can then reply that the Creator is free to act beyond created law, having your cake and eating it too. That is a coherent theological assertion to them. It is not, however, a scientific demonstration. The more foundational the exception, the more candidly its dependence on faith has to be admitted. Now, let's perhaps look at a deeper resurrection. From a Hindu point of view, the deepest question is not whether a body rose 2,000 years ago. It is what must arise or be realized in this very life. The ordinary person identifies with the body, the mind, the emotions, memory, success, injury, status, etc. The person says, I am passing this collection. Hindu Dharma replies that you have a body, mind, and emotions, but you are not exhausted by them. In your deepest nature, you are the Atmana, the deathless self, that which is not the mind, beyond the mind. This does not mean ignoring the body or pretending that pain is unreal. It means refusing to confuse the changing vehicle, body, mind, and emotions, with the observer who knows and witnesses the change. The real death is avidya, or ignorance, false identification, and the clinging to simply I and mine. Important, but relatively important. The real resurrection is the dawning of vivek, or discrimination. Recognizing the inner self was never merely the body-mind complex. So to the Hindus, the true resurrection is not the revival of a dead body. It is the end of the mistake that thought that the body was the totality of one's being. Now, Christian language comes near this inner demand when it speaks of being born again, but one has to ask them, what is being born again? Has one simply accepted a doctrine about another person's past, or has fear diminished, ego softened, compassion deepened, and false identity falling away? A transformation that leaves cruelty, tribal certainty, and the hunger for domination intact is not yet a spiritual resurrection. The issue is not whether rationality must drain sacred life of all poetry, nuance, mystery. It is whether faith becomes an escape from inner responsibility, from rationality. The resurrection claim becomes spiritually fruitful only if it confronts the believer with the living question: if Christ rose, what in me must rise? What in me must die? This is also the ethical test of every religious proclamation. Does it make one more humble, less violent, less obsessed with control, more capable of serving others? Or does it become a badge of membership, a declaration? My miracle is history and yours is superstition. The latter may protect institutional power, but it does not reveal spiritual maturity. Now, the Catholic belief in the Eucharist brings this issue into particularly vivid form. The consecrated bread and wine are literally held to be Christ's body and blood in a real sacramental sense, although they retain the appearance of bread and wine. Ritual food can indeed be a profound means of remembrance, communion, and transformation. The question then is why symbolic depth is sometimes denied precisely when it could illuminate the meaning of the ritual, while literalism is insisted upon where it safeguards an institution's authority. Now, it would be careless to say that every monotheist or every Christian is motivated by domination. Many believers live humbly, serve generously, and resist the misuse of religion. Yet, too many religious institutions have often been shaped by patriarchy, hierarchy, conquest, and the need to decide who is superior, which one is the real one, who alone possesses the truth, and who must submit to that truth. The issue is not a word play between resurrection and erection. Their origins are unrelated. The issue is the psychology of vertical religion, the temptation to turn spiritual ascent into social and masculine superiority. Rising then becomes not awakening but ego, from rising over others, controlling others' bodies, minds, emotions, defining truth for everyone, monopolizing God, and sanctifying power. Hindu realization generally offers another direction, though, of course, all religions are made up of humans, and you can find the more enlightened, if you will, or the less enlightened in every single religion. In Hinduism, the Atmana, sometimes called the self with a capital S, not to be confused with the little s ego self, the capital S self, Atmana, is not a possession of the ego, or a tribe, or a monopoly on any revelation. This requires discipline, devotion, meditation, inquiry, and in Hinduism, guru-disciple relationship. And it does not ask us merely to praise a past miracle. It asks us to confront the ignorance right now inside of all of us. Now, of course, Mark Twain was not a Hindu by any stretch of the imagination, but he did not provide final spiritual answers. His late work often stops in skepticism and bitterness, making us all think. But his satire is valuable because he could see the gap between religion's noble language and the human cruelty, hypocrisy, and literalism that often traveled under religious protection. Letters from Earth, written in 1909, was so controversial that Twain expected it would not be published. His daughter Clara later blocked its planned publication in 1939. The book finally appeared in 1962, wow, more than 50 years after his death. Now, the War Prayer which was Twain's indictment of patriotic religious blessings of war, also remained unpublished during his lifetime. The Mysterious Stranger was issued after his death in a heavily edited form, with material considered offensive to religious leaders. There's irony here. Now, religion speaks of truth, light, conscience, and fearless witness. Yet, Twain's religious criticisms were treated as too dangerous for the public scrutiny. This was not the work of a single church hiding a manuscript. It was a wider fear of offending piety, fear of scandal perhaps, fear of what follows when inherited belief is examined. Man is the only animal that has the true religion. Several of them. Mark Twain, quote unquote. Man is the only animal that has the true religion. Several of them. That sharp line warns against any tradition which imagines that sincere certainty is the same as truth. But Twain's skepticism need not be the final destination. When literalism dies, what should arise is not contempt for all religion, just deeper discernment, that's all. So let's look at the modern atheists, such as the late Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris. And they have a role in exposing real abuses, cruelty, irrationality, hypocrisy, and the use of God as a weapon of power. Their critique has extreme value. Yet when religion is treated as nothing but poisonous, totally delusional, and useless, criticism can harden into another absolutism. Very interesting. Human beings have always tried to understand life, death, consciousness, suffering, morality, the mystery of existence itself. Religion has sometimes served domination. It has also formed disciplines of compassion and service and art, philosophy, renunciation, and profound interior inquiry. To condemn all of it with contempt is not necessarily freedom from religious aggression. It may simply be the old aggression wearing a secular uniform. So the question for both believer and atheist is the same. Have you transcended the will to dominate, or are you merely changing pulpits? So the resurrection image will continue to move humanity because it addresses something real, our longing not to be trapped in death, in grief, in failure, in meaninglessness. But sacred longing can be expressed at different levels. At one level, it seeks reassurance that a believed and beloved body will return. At a deeper level, it asks, what in us survives the death of false identity? This is where the Hindu teaching becomes both gentle and demanding. Do not stop at disbelief in someone else's miracle. Do not stop at belief in it either. Look within. What must die within you, perhaps? What still clings to fear, to total body identification, to tribal certainty, and to power? What happens when those things begin to fall away? And all of you who are getting older and older, you know, it naturally falls away, the body, the mind, emotion. What's left? The inner essence, which Hindus call the Atmana, which is the provable experiences of pure energy, Shakti, which then we vow to put to good use, which is light, the inner light of inspiration, creativity, and the feeling, too, of lightness, buoyancy, that youthful feeling no matter what the physical age, and also the commonality of love. Love and energy, Om, this are we with emotions, mind, and body. This is the true essence that then manifests into the body, mind, and emotions. And one can rightly ask, well, what happens when the body dies? Well, the energy goes on for sure. There's still going to be light. There's still going to be warmth, which is translated into the human experience of love. But ultimately, who knows? And the rishis in Hinduism did recognize that when it comes to those ultimate questions, though we do believe in that inner Atmana, because it's experiential. experiencing that energy, love and light. But when it came to the ultimate questions, what will happen, we do believe in reincarnation, some sort of, but who knows for sure? I mean, we can't actually prove those things empirically. So the rishis recognized this, and they just said, ka vidya. Who knows when it comes to those deep questions? That's humility. And we also say about this experience, this greater experience, which we label, I mean, these are words, we label it Brahman, which is a neuter term, totally different than God. God's a noun for the one male creator being as opposed to goddess. But Brahman is simply a word recognizing the greater forces of this love, light, and energy. And we are an individual source of that love, light, and energy. But we too recognize that Maunavakya Parabrahman, the greatest experience of this, is found how? Through silent speech. Maunavakya. Silent speech. And then who knows? So then what's the benefit, one may say, of experiencing this inner essence? And even the energy and the light and the love, in a sense, can be transcended into an experience of no-thingness, which we all do every night when we go into deep sleep. So one may say, well, what's the point? Well, feeling more energy, feeling more light, feeling more love, wouldn't that make all of our lives much better, and those lives of those around us? Yeah, of course. What's the point then of entering into the no-thingness? This is where Buddhism comes in, and there really didn't have to be a separate religion, because whether it was the Buddha or his followers, Hindus recognize this. We know there's that ultimately we don't know ka, and that the ultimate experience is found in silent speech. Dakshinamurti to the Saiva Hindus, Shiva as the silent sage teaching through silence. So what's the point of entering into that? Well, just like entering into deep sleep, it can enrich your life. It can make you feel better, feel more confident as you go throughout the day, feel more rested. Interesting now with AI. AI is just a mirror of all of us, and it just goes on and on thinking like our mind itself, because the mind is a mirror, like the moon. We analogize it to the moon, which is merely reflecting the light of El Sol, if you will, or the sun. So AI, too, is a good example of the mind. It just keeps going and going and going. So what would be the point of once in a while unplugging it? Wow. If you do a little research in the how many resources that AI demands in energy and water, ecologically, it would be very helpful to the planet to unplug it once in a while. So, too, it's very helpful to all of us. Obviously, we have deep sleep, but in the meditative state, or the waking state, entering into the love, light, and energy, and perhaps beyond into the no-thingness, is very refreshing. So there's a practical reason for going into the no-thingness. Not nothing, but no-thingness. So the answer here in all of this is not that a corpse is walking out of a grave. How ghastly, actually. And wouldn't one think there'd be a transformation? I remember years ago the late Robert Schuller, whose Crystal Palace was magnificent, but that all came tumbling down also, in a sense. He was giving a sermon one day, and he recalls that a fellow walked up, and he had a stereotypical look of Jesus. He had long hair and a beard and robes. And he said to the pastor, Robert Schuller, that he was Jesus. And so what did Robert Schuller do? He said, "Show me your scars." Really? So you think a person who's going to resurrect themselves is going to keep the scars? How does that work? Upon examination, it shows the absolute absurdity of such a doctrine. So is it not that we human beings need to awaken to who we are? We are that inner essence of love and light and energy, fully provable. And look at the opposites and you'll see the benefit of it. With a body, mind, or emotions. Just trying to do the best we can to get through this life. And if you find a religion that you enjoy, follow it. Respect the other religions of the world. And we have to recognize that as humans in all institutions, we do good things, we do bad things. That's all. Because religions are human constructs, of course. However, inwardly or divinely inspired, if you will. And so it's an inevitability, this religio process, which simply and profoundly, in its very essence, means to link, to tie, to bind. In other words, just as humans trying to get our act together, figuring out who we are, why we're here, what the purpose of this very fleeting life is. I mean, it's not that long, and it can be over at any moment. So it makes sense to logically, why not try to live it in the best way we can, enjoying it, experiencing positive energy, feeling a sense of inspiration, as we're doing now, and then experiencing love. And these are qualities that we see in our primate species and other primates as well. Those of you that have dogs and cats, you know, they probably exhibit more of these qualities than most of us do. So realizing this inner essence, seeking those things, spiritual, if you will. Remember, that's incorporeal. So no body is spiritual. It's the religious teachings and practices like the path that lead to the incorporeal spirit. So this is not an escape from life. It's perhaps the beginning of truly living. So we could ask ourselves again, what exactly is arising? Is it the ego's claim to power? Or is it the inner essence of love and light and energy? Om, peace, peace, peace. Shanti, shanti, shanti.